Have you ever taken yourself out of your comfort zone? If you haven't, Tough Mudder Midlands might be the perfect way to do so. Located at Belvoir Castle, this obstacle course originated from British Special Forces training and has since evolved into something that will test you both physically and mentally. Tough Mudder Midlands has 3 course options, which are 5k course, which virtually anyone can do as long as they can put one foot in front of the other and don't mind getting wet and dirty. The 15k course, which requires you to do some prior training both in terms of your strength and your stamina. If you don't know where to start, don't worry. The Tough Mudder website has its own dedicated training plan to help you out with that. And then the last one for the super fit people is Tough Mudder Affinity. So this is where you start by doing the 15k course, and then after you've done your first 15k lap, you must do as many of the 5 or 15k laps as possible before the time runs out. Spoiler warning, I did the 5, not the infinity. So on the 2025 course, i.e. the one that Lee and I did, the 5k course had 14 obstacles and the 15k had 23. And I will obviously be talking about the 5k ones because that's one I did. And not only that, but everybody on the 15k course also do the obstacles on the 5k course. So irrespective, you're going to probably have an idea of the obstacles anyway. So before you actually start your race or challenge, actually it's not a race, it's a challenge, you will have a 10 to 15 minute warm-up session, which is basically a rave disguised as circuit training. The guy starting us off was excellent, got everybody hyped, irrespective of what prior nerves we have. Now, trust me, I was nervous. I exited the car and I looked around and everybody was in Jim Stark clothing and had at least one pack. And I was there going, am I in the wrong place? Am I actually going to make it out alive? R.I.P. Now, my inner thoughts needed to shut the hell up because clearly I have made it in one piece and have the t-shirt to prove it, even if I did end up with a couple of battle scars to prove it. So regardless of distance, there is going to be a strong likelihood that you're going to have at least one scrape and or bruise. So bear this in mind. We'll go into my scrape and bruise tally a bit more when we start the obstacles. So after we started, we ended up running into the woods, which then led to people walking in the woods until we hit the first obstacle titled Lumberjack. For this one, you had to go over 2 logs, which were about 6 foot off the ground. And it was my least favourite out of all of them that we did, because after my fellow mudders helped me over the second log, my arse decided it was going to hit the floor before my feet, and I went, which led to a lovely bruise on my right arm that I have only just got rid of, and me joking with Lee that I was going to end up finishing the course looking like a Dalmatian. At this point, our favourite part of the whole course happened, and that was the track between Lumberjack and the second obstacle. This track just felt like it was going forever. There was no distant tracker signs in between hand. In fact, we didn't really know how much we travelled until we got to the water stop midway through. Belvoir Castle as a site is gorgeous. It's stunning to look at, but it is incredibly hilly and is one of the reasons behind it being one of Tough Mudder's most technically challenging courses. We did end up filling the time by chatting to a couple of lovely gentlemen, one from Manchester, one from Birmingham, who were part of a work strategy away day. Unfortunately, we ended up losing them after the second obstacle. So to the 2 lovely gentlemen in question, if you are watching this, please let me know if you got to the end, because we really wanted to help you get on the line, but we lost you, unfortunately. Speaking of, obstacle 2 was called Pyramid Scheme. You had to climb to the top of a tall, slippery structure, but you could only do so with the help of your fellow mudders, mudders being the people doing Tough Mudder. So expect to be boosted, used as a human ladder, pulled up, and then when you get to the top, you've got to help pull up the people that helped you boost up to begin with. The Mudder community are an excellent bunch, and this is an obstacle that demonstrates that in spades. Afterwards, there was a short walk stroke run between obstacle 2 and then obstacles 3 and 4, which were back to back. Now, obstacle 3 was the most bizarre one in my opinion, and it was called Rat Frost, an obstacle which apparently was also used at World's Toughest Mudder, which took place at Belvoir Castle at the end of June, i.e. the week before the Midlands Tough Mudder. So you started by crawling through a tunnel, which thanks to the 15k mudders were incredibly slippery, as they'd already done their first water obstacle. And then you had to go under a cargo net, which was deemed the rat part. As for the frost, there was a massive pit of water full of ice cubes, in the words of Michael Rosen. We can't go over it, we can't go under it, so we had to go through it. Now, if you're a tallie like Lee, it's probably going to reach your kneecaps. If you're a short ass like me, it's going to go up to about your waist. Either way, it's going to be cold when you enter the pit of water. I was a bit struggling regarding why the cargo net was part of the obstacle. It would have made more sense just to have you crawl through the tunnel in the pit, especially given that Rat Frost was supposed to be Arctic Eminer's replacement, which, for those of you that aren't aware what Arctic Eminer is, it's a Tough Mudder signature obstacle where you either dunk or slide down into an ice pit of water, and then you have to dunk yourself under the second thing and then come out the other side. So Rat Frost for us was basically Midlands' version, but there was no dunking, etc. We just waded along and went, this is very cold. Straight after this was Kiss of Mud. The night before we did the course, Lee and I were actually in bed discussing whether or not Tough Mudder would actually be muddy. We did the course at the start of July. We'd had an incredibly dry spell in the UK, which is great for us as Brits because it's a rarity, but also we were doing a Tough Mudder, and I was concerned it was going to be less Tough Mudder, more tough dirt. Yeah, we didn't need to be concerned. The crawl under the barbed wire was incredibly muddy to the point where I was actually sliding along the ground and the front part of me ended up changing colour. This one was one of my top 3 and I had an absolute blast and just couldn't stop smiling all the way through the obstacle. After another short walk run to warm the legs up after, splashing in the ice pit, we arrived at obstacle number 5, which was Lee's favourite obstacle and my top 3, which was Block Nest Monster. So Block Nest Monster is a water obstacle which consists of you going over 2 500-pound blocks to get to the other side, and your fellow mudders would help by pushing and pulling the blocks, which would then cause them to rotate, which would then lead to you heading to the other side. This one was great fun. We both enjoyed it, but the water here was about 5 foot deep. So if you cannot swim confidently, fully clothed, skip this one. Especially if you're short. There is a photo of 2 gentlemen looking majestic and me paddling towards the block. But if you can swim and you are confident in water, this is going to be one of your favourites. So after a short time to drop off, it was number 6, which is just a tip where you had to cross this little obstacle using your fingertips. I have no upper body strength whatsoever, so I failed miserably, but I gave it a go. And that's what Tough Mudder is all about. Also, another thing that I failed doing because of my crap upper body strength was number 7, which was pole dancer. You had 2 railings either side, and your mission was to use the poles to get to the other side. And yeah, I tried, but I just did not succeed. I tried though, I tried. So after this, there was a much welcome drink stop, and the first time that we kind of had a gauge on the course where we were distance-wise. Because at this whole point, all we'd been doing was following signs this way to the 5k. We hadn't actually known at that point, 1, how much the 5k we'd done, and 2, how much the 5k we had left to go. So alongside telling us just how far we'd gone and how far we had to go, the drink stop allowed us to enjoy unlimited water. We just grabbed a cup and then poured it ourselves. And then we were able to have a cup of juice, which was like a high electrolyte drink, and then a bit of grenade bar as a snacky snack as well. I was a little bit gutted that they didn't have the Oreo one because that is my jam. I love the stuff. But the white chocolate cookies and cream bar that I had instead was pretty tasty as well, so I would consider buying that again. So after our little snacky stop, it was on to obstacle number 8, hero walls, where we had to get over 8-foot walls. 5 foot 3, I had help going up, I had help going down. Thank you to Mudder Nation and the camaraderie that comes with it. And in fact, that camaraderie really helped me achieve success in obstacle number 9, Everest. The reason my legs are still scraped at the time of recording this video, this is a grease 13-foot half pipe that took me, what Lee counted to be 15 attempts to get up, to the point when the man looked at me as I'm running up it going, look, I won't, you can go round, it's okay. But thanks to my fellow mudders, I had a fire up my arse and I was not going to stop at that obstacle until I made it to the top or collapse. Spoiler warning, I made it to the top. I'm pretty sure I cried when I hit it, but I got up there. At this point, Tough Mudder, I believe, was sufficiently dried off, and thus it was time for another water obstacle. Cage crawl. You had to pull yourself under the cages with about 4 inches of breathing space, which sounds scarier than what it actually was. As long as you can float on your back and just know to pull yourself along, you will be fine. Although I do now have a personal vendetta against mops because there was just a random line of the stringy things just midway through the obstacle. I don't know why they're there. I've asked Tough Mudder why they're there. They still haven't answered my question. I'm only guessing it was to cause us panic midway through, but I'll be honest, my thought process wasn't, oh my God, that was so scary, I was going to go and die. And more, does Tough Mudder have shares in the leader that we don't know about? Did we miss something? Because we saw the product placements, but we ain't seen anything for mops. There we were. And Tough Mudder went, right, for obstacle number 11, which they called Twinkle Toes, we're going to make you do a balance beam whilst you're wet. Now, you are able to have help for this one. I happily held Lee in another man's hand so I could make my way across, and was very happy that we did it with help without going for dunk. Then there was number 12. Oh, my favourite, my personal favourite. Love this obstacle. It's Mud Mile. So firstly, it's not a mile long, but it is incredibly muddy. You have these incredibly slippery muddy hills. There's about 5 of them. And then obviously what comes up must come down. So you got to go up the hill, slide into the trench, up the hill, in the trench. And I'm not even exaggerating, you literally change colour by the end of this. It's so much fun. It's basically like giant, slippy slides. I was weeing the whole time, the wee thing. I was covered head to toe. Fun fact, it actually took me 4 hair washes to get the mud out of my hair because it was that crusty. And you got to bear in mind, we did this start of July after that really warm, multiple heat wave drive weather. So there were 2 more obstacles after this, which Lee and I ended up skipping. Middlehorn, because it's a 3-story high A-frame, and we both were like, yeah, if you have a seizure on top of that, you're buggered. And electroshock therapy, because I'm not actually medically allowed to do it. In fact, if you have any seizure history, heart conditions, metal in your body, etc., you can't do electroshock therapy, so bear this in mind. Also, something else to note, if you don't want to do an obstacle for whatever reason, you can skip it. That is perfectly okay. In fact, they actually actively encourage it if you're not physically capable of doing an activity. For example, if you cannot swim and there is an obstacle saying there is deep water, they will actively say, skip it, we do not mind. You can do other obstacles, we don't want you to drown. So whilst we didn't have the big epic shocky finish compared to the other mudders because of seizures, we did it. 5k later, caked in mud, we had completed our first ever Tough Mudder, and we are now officially members of Mudder Legion. So, what goodies did we get for completing our 5k? Well, we got a finisher's medal, we got ourselves a headband, we got ourselves this handy dandy t-shirt, we had some ionized water, some beef jerky, electrolytes, drinks, and a can of beer, because Tough Mudder are mindful that you've been through the ringer regardless of what course you have chosen, and have rewarded you accordingly. After we'd gone and done the celebratory photos, picked up our goodies, it was back to backdrop, which is included in your price, and then off to rinse and get changed into our clean clothes. My only grievance here was that I wish the rinse off area was either separated by gender or had an individual rinsing area, as there were about 30-40 people rinsing off on one time, meaning that one would not, let's say, rinse off as much of the mud as they would if they were in a private separated setting. But still, having it was great. We liked having a quick rinse off, clean clothes, and driving back in said clean clothes with a medal round our neck to go, we finished what we actually started. With all that in mind, would I recommend you do Tough Mudder in 2026? If you want to do something completely different and get out your comfort zone, this one's a must do. You are going to have so much fun, irrespective of your fitness level. The 5k courses are incredibly accessible as long as you go into it with the willingness to give as many of the obstacles a go as it's safe to do, and have an open mind. You are just going to have a whale of a time. Lee and I already decided midway through the course that we want to go back in 2026 to do another 5k, and we look forward to seeing what obstacles from this year return or introduced, because they constantly have evolving obstacles every year. And with something like the Midlands, because World Toughest Mudder once again is at Belvoir Castle next year, I look forward to seeing some of those obstacles potentially being on the courses next year. If you've got any questions that I haven't covered, feel free to pop them in the comment section. And if you are a fellow member of Mudder Legion, let me know your favourite obstacles in the comment section. And if it is your first time here, welcome. I'm Kelly. I do my Melton, and I cover local events, reviews, and various chaotic experiences in and around the area of Melton Mowbray. So give this a share if I made you laugh or gave you that important information. And if you want brutally honest reviews, vlogs, tours, interviews, etc., make sure to hit that subscribe button.